and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 221. And today's date is November 21st, 2013, and the title of this episode is The U.S. Dollar Has Just Lost the Reserve Status. And what we are seeing right now, we are seeing that the Chinese are saying that they no longer need to purchase treasury bonds. At this time, they are going to use their money, their U.S. dollars, in different ways. And one way that we have seen, and I reported on this, is that they are using trillions of dollars now and putting that into African nations to help mine, to help create pipelines, to help build an infrastructure in Africa. And the Chinese right now are signaling to the entire world that the U.S. dollar will no longer be the reserve currency. They do not see the benefit of it. They don't want it. They don't need it. And we are seeing this happen right in front of our eyes. Yesterday I reported that a main event will be going hot, and it will. You will see during this report how things are all fitting together and how they are on the brink of bringing this event to everyone to get the entire world into this war that is coming. And they need to do this because the dollar implosion is escalating right now. Foreign nations are going to dump the U.S. dollar. They are going to dump their treasury bonds. China just set up a red flare into the sky, alerting every other nation at this time. Here we go. It is go time. They are ready to dump what they have. And this is why we have to remember the Fed has been out there telling everyone that they want to increase QE by 50%. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be way more than 50%, because what is going to happen, it is going to be a landslide of U.S. dollars, treasury bonds, all heading back to the United States, and we are going to see this happen probably very soon, because China just is now telling everyone what their plans are. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Let's all break it down, see what's happening. And this is really unbelievable how this is all turning out. And it's pretty much what everyone has been talking about all along. And we know that the economy is not doing well. I know the stock market is going to new heights. And you can see gold is being continually pushed down. We are going to see gold pushed down as far as they can push it, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everyone out of gold right now. And they're trying to keep up the illusion that the economy is doing well. Markets going up, gold is going down. But guess what? Goldman Sachs, all these other financial institutions are there gobbling up the gold as it's being sold. They are completing everything that they put into motion at this time, and they're trying to do this right now before this main event, and we will probably see gold go even lower than it is right now. And how do we know the economy is really not doing well? Well, we take a look around the country, we see how retail sales are going, because let's put this into perspective. They keep telling us that unemployment is getting better. More people are getting jobs. Well, if this is the case, and this is so true, then sales right now in the retail industry should be a lot better from a year ago, right? Because the unemployment was, 8.34%, and now it's down to 7.3%, and now they're going to revise the unemployment, and it'll probably go back down to 7.2%. So more people have jobs, more people have disposable income, and retail sales should be picking up. But we see the opposite happening. Actually, more people getting jobs, they're employed. We should see housing going up from a year ago. But what do we see? We see it crumbling down. We see everything declining. Right now, Sears is hurting. Sales fell at both its namesake store Sears and the Kmart discount chain, and sales have dropped around 6.7%. And what they're looking to do, and we saw this happen to many other retailers, they are going to start closing stores. And you know what happens when they start closing stores. We saw it happen to Circuit City. We saw it happen to Blockbuster. We saw it happen to Borders. Every single time you see them close a couple of stores, guess what happens? Eventually, it completely closes down, and those stores, that whole entire chain, does not exist anymore. And we're seeing this happen to many, many retailers right now. And they realize this, and next year, they are going to start closing their stores. Now, like I said in the beginning of this report, China no longer sees the benefit of holding the US dollar. And they went on to say that China's central bank has said it no longer sees the benefit in increasing its 3.66 trillion foreign currency reserves. It no longer in China's favor to accumulate foreign exchange reserves. They can use the US dollars in different diversified plans. Decreasing the influence of the dollar and other currencies is a step closer to reaching Chinese 2015 goal to float its currency, and according to the People's Bank of China, will help the everyday Chinese citizen. The move also provides a buffer to China, now get this, from future U.S. Federal Reserve stimulus tapering. Now, as we know, the Federal Reserve is not going to taper. And they understand this. They are buffering, they are protecting themselves from what's going to happen here in the United States, and that is called the collapse. Once the yuan is set to free float, the international transactions will be carried out in the Chinese currency, and it will become common in global trade, in league with the euro and the dollar. And to even put this, and to even go further of what the Chinese plan, because this is what they're doing right now, and they understand they need to start this at this point. You have to remember the Chinese are buying gold like there is no tomorrow, because they want the yuan backed by gold. They want to make sure that they have their insurance policy in place. They want to make sure that they have a store of wealth, and this is why they have been doing this. And right now, they are looking to completely bypass the dollar. The Shanghai Future Exchange could price its crude oil futures contract in yuan. Its chairman said on Thursday, adding that the course is speeding up and working towards this type of regulatory approvals. China is the only country in the world that is a major crude producer, consumer, and big importer. And what they are trying to do is they will be using the yuan, which will be the petro-yuan, just like the petrodollar, and they are going to bypass and not use the US dollar to trade their commodities. And right now, they went on to say that I don't think it would be unacceptable for the world to use the yuan for commodities trading. And we are definitely seeing where this is headed. They are pushing for this, and at this moment today, when they announced this, and this has always been in the works, the US dollar is now losing the reserve status. Chinese yuan is now moving into place. Things are starting to escalate. Things are starting to change, and the central bankers, US government, understand this. They knew this was coming. This is not a surprise. This is not something that is new. They knew this from the beginning. This is why the Obama administration and the US government have been encircling China. This is why they have been blaming them for cyber attacks. This is why all of this is in place. And even today, it came out that Susan Rice warned China to curb their cyber espionage. And this went on to say that China's continued cyber espionage against the United States is undermining economic relations. White House National Security Advisor Susan Rice warned Beijing on Wednesday. Rice said in an unusually forceful language, China must curtail government-backed cyber spying or risk undermining close trade ties. If meaningful action is not taken now, this behavior will undermine the economic relationship that benefits both our nations. So what are they really saying? How dare you bypass the dollar and use the yuan to trade oil? How dare you not buy treasuries? And the central bankers, U.S. government, always make a threat to those non-private Western central bank countries. They've made threats to North Korea. They made threats to Iran, Syria, and the list goes on. Because why? Those countries are the enemies of the central bankers. And when I say they, and when I talk, I don't always use central bankers or the elite or the globalists, whatever you want to call them. They are them. Central bankers, globalists, elite, the ones who are controlling the money supply, the ones who are pulling the strings. Now, in many of my reports, and I've always said this, there are certain things that the U.S. government needs to get ready for this collapse, and now they are starting to push this forward. We understand that they need to disarm the American people. This is one of their things that they want to do. They've wanted to do this for a very long time. It's part of their plan, so they can eventually change the Constitution. And now they are moving towards that goal. President Obama is working on a new gun regulation, and the ATF would not comment on the content of the regulations, but information from the White House indicates the deal with firearms that go missing while in transit will be part of the new gun regulation. And we have to understand they continually pile on these regulations. The president has created a huge amount of executive orders that support the UN Arms Treaty and the Dianne Feinstein gun bill, and those are still pending in the Senate. These are the things they want passed. They want them passed as quickly as possible. And again, they will be ramping this up because they need to get this done. Now, to even push this even further, the Senate has passed the nuclear option, curbing filibusters. In a victory for Democrats, the Senate has voted to weaken filibusters and make it harder for Republicans to block confirmation of the president's nominees for judges and other top posts. So now President Obama will not have to worry about these, ridiculous people trying to block who he wants in power. He can just put them into power. And this is not good. This is removing what has been set up, because this is not supposed to be an easy way of bringing someone in. This is supposed to be something where the minority voice gets a way to shout out what they believe and what they want. And at this time, by this nuclear option that they put in place, the minority is not going to be heard. They are silencing the voice, and the majority will tell and dictate what they're going to do. So yesterday, the House was, a majority and a minority. The minority had a voice. Tomorrow, the same House will be one of minority. Where can they turn when they wish to speak to the world? Absolutely nowhere, for they have abandoned the principles of the Republic, which gives a minority such influence over his captors so that they may pursue their values rather than his country's principles. And this is what we're seeing right now. It is a step closer to pretty much dictatorship, and this is what we are seeing. They are bending, they are bypassing, they are ignoring the Constitution, the laws, and we see this happen at every overturned. We see the NDAA. We see the Patriot Act. We see the laws that Dianne Feinstein wants to put out that you cannot talk badly about the NSA. She wants to. She wants to dictate who is a journalist, who isn't a journalist. And we can see how this is all playing out all over the place. And the United States is not the only country that this is happening to. You have to remember, eventually what they want to do is they want to have every single private Western central bank all become one nation, one world order, whatever you want to call it. And right now in Japan, what is happening is the Japanese government, and right now they're having protests. Thousands of people are protesting in Tokyo because what Prime Minister Abe wants to do is he wants to broaden the definition of official secrets. And what this means is he wants to keep things away from the public and never tell them about it. And he said this is vital, and we've heard this before in the United States, and many other countries have heard this too. It is vital for strengthening the security cooperation with the main ally, the United States, and other countries, and it is for national security reasons. And the people are out there protesting, saying without the right to know, democracy cannot exist. If this law comes to pass, our Constitution is nothing more than a scrap of paper, and this is going to happen in every single one of the private Western central bank countries, and we are seeing it happen all over the world right now. And this goes on to say, critics say the law would prevent journalists from investigating official mistakes, such as the collusion between regulators and utilities that contributed to the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyone convicted of breaking the law could be jailed for up to 5 years. Sounds like something Dianne Feinstein wants to do, doesn't it? This law is absolutely unacceptable. We have a right to know everything, said Aiko Hirose, a 50-year-old transport worker. After all, we are the voters. Same thing in the United States. After all, we are the people. We are the country. Now, as we know, eventually what is going to happen after this main event occurs here in the United States, war is going to break out. We understand this. We see military assets being placed in strategic locations. We see missile shields going up. We see the pivot to Asia where the U.S. is encircling China, and we understand that China is building up their military force. Russia is building up their military force, and right now the president is looking to reduce the ICBM force. He wants to close the silos at this point. The Obama administration has drafted a plan to shutter an intercontinental ballistic missile squadron 3 years after it assured hesitant lawmakers that the new START U.S.-Russia Arms Reduction Treaty would not lead to deep cuts in the ICBM force. But guess what? They are shutting down and removing the missiles, and they are closing the silos. And the people are outraged, and they're saying, you can remove the missiles, but don't destroy the silos, because if we ever need to use them, we can place the missiles back in there. But they're not going to save them. They are going to destroy them. And the defense experts say the proposed eliminations would be detrimental to the U.S. national security, of course. And we see that Russia is modernizing and building up its nuclear weapons program. We don't have that good of an understanding of how many weapons China has. We had recently a North Korea nuclear weapon test, and we can see what is happening right now. They are setting all of this up, and this is their main plan, because what they want to do eventually is to have a one world NATO military. And this is what they're trying to accomplish at this time. They are going to remove a lot of the weapons. They are purging the military, and they want this war to go hot. They want to reduce the population, and they have many, many plans, because these central bankers, the elite, the globalists, whatever you want to call them, understand that after the war, because they profit no matter what, doesn't matter who wins or loses, they will end up profiting from all of this. And eventually, after the war is all said and done, what they want to do is they want to reset the system completely. They want to remove the Constitution. They want to place their laws into effect. And this is why you see the Common Core teaching in the schools. They are preparing for everything that happens afterwards, because they understand the economy is collapsing. They understand the U.S. dollar will no longer be the reserve currency until after the war, and they believe they can reset the entire system. And this is what they've been planning on all along. Now, since China right now, there are reports out there saying they will have the largest Pacific fleet. And a U.S. Congressional Advisory Panel sounded a warning Wednesday about China's military buildup, predicting Beijing could possess the largest fleet of modern submarine ships in the Western Pacific. The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission said China's military modernization is altering the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region and challenging decades of U.S. preeminence. And this is what we are seeing. They know that China has been building up their navy. They understand that they are the enemy at this time because what they are planning to do. And we have to remember, China is building and making deals with nations all over the world to become the reserve currency of the world. The central bankers do not want this to happen. So to stop this from happening, you know what they're going to plan. They're going to plan a war. And this is how, and they believe that they're going to win this war. They believe they'll come out unscathed, and they will be able to reset the entire thing, like I said. And right now, the U.S. military and people in America are screaming, saying, America needs to increase military to confront China's military buildup. And here we are. This is the buildup of the military that is going to lead to the World War. And this is World War III. And this goes on to say that the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission calls for an American surge to offset China's growing military capabilities. And the Commission wants Congress to fund naval efforts that will allow the United States to maintain readiness in the Western Pacific. And we hear, and I was just thinking, and I might have said this before, I don't remember. We understand that President Obama is trying to get this immigration bill passed to let millions and millions of people into the country. Now we have to think, why do they want all of these immigrants in the country? Well, if there's an upcoming war, guess where these immigrants are going to be headed off to? They are going to be headed off to war. They will be drafted and put into fatigues. Here is your rifle, and they will be pushed out into the New World War. And their plans are very different from what everyone thinks that is really happening here. Now, let's see. Now, there was a warning, okay, because there's an imminent threat to embassies out in Lebanon, and the Saudis have put out a warning saying they urge all their citizens to return home to their country. Now, we understand that there was a bombing of an embassy, and what I don't understand is in August they put out a terrorist threat to the Middle East, and they were very worried about all the embassy members, and there was no bombing at that time, and it was a huge big deal. But this time there was an embassy bombing. Saudis are saying they want their people to come home, but not a peep out of the United States. There's no terrorist alert. There's no warning to the embassy members to shut down and come home. There is absolutely nothing. It's crickets. What could be going on? Okay. Now, we understand that CISPA is pending, And this CISPA bill is now headed to the House of Representatives for a floor vote. CISPA is going to be used, and it is already going to be backed up by the executive orders that President Obama created. Even though the news is out there telling us that he's going to veto this bill, why did he create the executive orders to support it? It makes no sense. Now, this bill, along with Dianne Feinstein's new type of CISPA bill, is going to decimate the internet freedoms the way you know them today. And this bill is moving along, and there will be an event which is going to be a cyber attack that will help this bill through, and it will most likely pass at this time. I mean, there's always a chance it won't, but they're trying to make this event occur. And we understand that this main event is going to happen in the next couple of months, because we have to understand what is happening in the next couple of months. Well, we understand that the debt ceiling debate comes back in February and March. The Fed already said that they're going to start tapering in the next couple of months, maybe as early as December. And they're still going to start reducing the Treasury bond purchases around February and March, if you can believe that, which is completely false, because you know they cannot possibly do this. Why can't they do this? Because all the foreign nations are going to start dumping it because of the red flare that China has just sent up, letting every single foreign nation know it is time to get rid of these treasury bonds. So what have the powers been doing, the elite, the globalists, the central bankers? They have been preparing for the next false flag. And what they have been doing is they've been giving us little breadcrumbs. They've been telling us that there are terrorists within the country. DHS has lost some of the people. They are broken off into lone wolf groups. We've seen warnings from Al-Qaeda. We've been seeing warnings from the Syrian, the new Osama bin Laden, the new evil henchman. And we've been seeing this being played out over and over and over. And now the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, National Border Patrol Council, President Brandon Judd said that the northern border represents the greatest threat from terrorists trying to enter the United States. They are trying to let every single American know that terrorists are already in the U.S. We saw there was a video, I think ABC put it out, showing terrorists in Kentucky, and they are just trying to keep everyone aware back in their subconscious that there are groups in the country that cannot be tracked. They can't trace them. They don't know where they are. And this goes on to say, as far as I am aware, all recent threat assessments have pointed to the northern border as the most likely point of entry into our country for terrorists, said Judd. And the potential for terrorists or violent extremists to attempt an attack or gain entry across the land, air, or maritime borders possess the single greatest security threat along the border. And we can see what is happening right now. We can see how they are playing this up. They are moving the agenda forward. It is go. The plan is hot. We are ready to do this. China just gave the signal. They just let everyone know it is time. The US dollar now is losing the reserve currency status of the world. The US cannot maintain control of the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is making deals with China. Saudi Arabia is making deals with Russia. Egypt has already signed a contract to purchase weapons and to receive aid. Libya is having major problems. Lebanon, unrest in Lebanon. They cannot maintain this control. This is going to end badly. 40,000 NATO troops standing by in these drills. They have missile defenses set up. They're encircling China. Do you get the picture? This is not going to end well. What else are they pushing? Well, the United Nations General Assembly, now we have to remember what happened back in Syria. They thought this event was going to be the event. This was going to help them blame Syria, and it could have been Iran at the time, that they actually caused the economic collapse of the United States. And this was going to allow them to start the war. But it fell apart. The United States looked like liars because they tried to convince everyone that they had this irrefutable proof that the Syrian government used the chemical weapons. And what we saw afterwards is that they didn't use the chemical weapons. Assad and the Russian government invited the inspectors in a day or two beforehand, and it just so happened that the chemical weapon disaster happened while the UN inspectors were there. So we can see what is happening at this point. So Saudi Arabia right now decided to use the United Nations, and what they did was they decided to create a resolution on Tuesday which strongly condemned what it claims are human rights violations in Syria and laid the blame for both the atrocities committed during the course of the 2-year conflict and the high death toll and at the feet of the Syrian government. The resolution strongly condemned the continued widespread and systematic gross violations of human rights. The resolution came extremely close to actually blaming the Syrian government for the August 21st chemical weapons attack by condemning the attack, for which it claims the UN inquiry provided clear evidence that surface-to-surface rockets were fired on August 21st. The resolution was actually drafted by Saudi Arabia, a country that has been instrumental in funding the rebels. And what we saw on videos, it was actually the rebels ripping out the heart, decapitating people, doing these murderous crimes that they were committing, and they were trying to change the record at this time. Because what do we know again? CNN put out a report that Assad has been hiding a cache of chemical weapons. I said this in my previous report, and this is also going to be used in this event that is coming up, because like I said, this is not going to be a one-off event. This is going to be a multi-pronged approach, and it will be a cyber attack. It will be a dirty nuke. It will be a chemical weapon. This attack is an all-out attack. This will be the horrific, bloody, fall to your knees crying attack that they want, because they understand Congress, the American people, will never, ever, ever go to war unless something horrific happens here in the States. And what is happening right now is that the Iranians are launching massive war drills in preparation for some type of Israeli strike. And this goes on to say the Iranian military forces launched a series of massive military drills across 9 provinces on Wednesday, following an order by the Supreme Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And the drills, codenamed Towards Jerusalem, will continue over the coming days and throughout the rest of this year. And the main purpose of these war games is to retain preparedness and increase the combat capability of the forces to confront any possible move by domestic and foreign enemies. So we can see all is being prepared because they understand that something is going to happen. They understand that these peace talks, there's no such thing as these peace talks. It doesn't matter if they sign a peace talk, they don't sign a peace talk. The Obama administration is playing Congress. Israel is playing the world with Saudi Arabia. The United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia are playing good cop, bad cop. United States, good cop. Israel, Saudi Arabia, bad cop. This is what they are doing. And this is not going to end well. The Obama administration has said to Congress right now, listen, if you impose more sanctions, the only option we have left is a military strike. So right now, they're trying to hold off, in voting on stronger sanctions. But right now, the U.S. Senate is going to move to impose new sanctions on Iran in December if nuclear negotiations between Western powers and Tehran do not bear fruit. The Senate must be prepared to move forward with a new Iran sanctions bill when the Senate returns after Thanksgiving recess. And Reid said, I am prepared to do just that in December. So we are going to see something happen because Obama already said, just like he said there was a red line in Syria. If Assad crosses that red line with chemical weapons, and of course we know that he did not cross any red line, but they made it up and they made everyone believe this, at least that's what they thought. This is what they're doing again, a little differently. They are telling the Senate, the only choice I will have is a military strike if you impose sanctions against Iran. So we can see what they are building up to. Now, security experts have gathered in Washington, D.C., and they are looking over the threat of Iran's capabilities. And what they have come to the conclusion that Iran has the ability, and the same as North Korea, the ability to detonate the electromagnetic pulse weapon in the States. And they're saying that it is more immediate than most realize at this time. At the latest round of negotiations between Iran, the U.S., and Europe, that it fails to yield any meaningful nuclear concessions from Tehran, a gathering of experts in the fields of defense, national security, and foreign policy convened in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, November 19th. An EMP attack by Iran, explained Schwartz, would have the power to shut down our electrical grid, and thus end our civilization as we know it. Iran has repeatedly called for a world without America, Schwartz continued, and has practiced this type of EMP attack from barges in the Caspian Sea. He went on to describe various plausible scenarios for high-altitude EMP detonations, describing the repercussions as catastrophic. So you have to think to yourself, what was the Grid X drill? What were the cyber bank drills all about? We can see what is happening because they have given us multiple warnings from the Syrian Electronic Army, from Al-Qasim, which is the Iranian cyber team. We can see now they're playing up the EMP attack because they know the lights are going to go out. And they go on to say the opportunity and time for diplomatic efforts has been exhausted. The U.S. must act militarily to stop Iran, to prevent them from becoming a nuclear armed threat to America. And you can see where this is all leading. If we step back and we look at the entire picture, we see what is going to happen. We understand that this is not going to get better. Their plan, their goal has always been the same. Yes, they had to step back for a moment because what happened with Syria, because they truly believed, and so did the world, they believed that this was going to bring them into war, and they were going to able to blame the economy collapsing on another country. They've reconvened, they reformulated their plan. The goal is still the same. It has not changed. Their tactic on what they're going to do right now has increased 100-fold to a new wave, a new order of horrific events that will happen in the United States. And this false flag event will be blamed on another country. The Fed, the central bankers, the U.S. government will not be blamed for what is going to happen to our economy, We understand that China is already making their move. Other countries will soon to follow. Treasury bonds will be sold off. U.S. dollars will flow back to the United States. The Fed has already indicated that they might have to increase the bond purchasing and the toxic real estate purchasing by 50%. We know this is going to be a lot more because we understand they already know what is about to happen. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially prepared. If you have not started to prepare, I would do so right now. Thanks a lot.